This podcast is made possible through donations from listeners like you and our partners at Tallman Equipment. Tallman prides itself in having more lineman tools in stock than anyone else. And now, when you're shopping online at tallmanequipment.com, look for the truck logo that says in stock and ready for shipping on hundreds of items on our website. That logo means that item is in stock and ready to ship the same day in most cases. When it comes to getting the tools and equipment linemen need, you gotta trust Tallman. Goalie Astro Gummies. You can find them at goalie.com. These gummies are a holistic, non-habit forming approach to help you relax, restore, and unwind. Ashwagandha is classified as an adaptogen. Adaptogens are a select group of plants that help your body cope with stress. Studies have shown that KSM 66 ashwagandha reduces levels of cortisol, the stress hormone. Use our promo code, the Show Up Dad Foundation, and get 10% off your order. And last but not least, Zenderance. These products are products that the Show Up Dad stands behind. They help to maximize your health. They strive to support and have a positive impact on the wellness of every hardworking dad out there. They use proven, clean, and accessible products to make an impact on your health and performance. Use my code, TheShowUpDad, and get 10% off your next purchase. For more info, go to www.zenderance.com. That is spelled XENDURANCE.com. Thank you. All marriages, even the really good ones, need mending. The routine of jobs, kids, chores, and other commitments can overshadow romance and passion with any husband and wife. As a result, couples can feel disillusioned or even alone. That is why we have created this marriage series, a platform for husbands and wives to come on and share what they do to be successful. Today's guests are Brian and Julie Russell. They're high school sweethearts celebrating 25 years of marriage this December. Both grew up on Space Coast of Florida, now living in Temecula, California. Brian and Julie have two high schoolers, 17-year-old son Caleb and 15-year-old daughter Caylyn. Brian is a journeyman lineman and a certified independent Optavia health and business coach. He has 26 years in the industry and 4 years in the health and wellness game. His lovely wife Julie is a proud stay-at-home mom turned health and business coach, personal trainer, and high school running coach. She has dedicated her life, time, and talent to helping develop teens and adults into individuals God intended them to be. Welcome to our show, guys.
Thank you for having us.
Be here.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, this is my beautiful wife, Jenny.
Hello. Hey, Jenny.
And yeah, we just thank you guys for coming on our show and just being able to share. The first question we want to ask you guys is, growing up, what did your parents show you about marriage? Like, what did you guys learn about that?
Yeah, I'll go with that one. So Julie and I, it's kind of funny. Even that long ago, divorce was already pretty prevalent. So it was really uncommon. So for both of us to have parents that were still together was pretty unique. And we've actually talked about this a lot, but when we got married, divorce really wasn't an option. It's just because of the way we were raised and the examples that we had from both of our parents. It's not like we'll get married and if this doesn't work out, we'll do something different. It was, hey, this is forever. Forever's forever. So I think that had a huge impact on our marriage. I know it did. I know when you go into something with an expectation, you're kind of setting the tone. That's anything in life. So to go into marriage with there's no backing out, as the attitude, I think that gave us or it definitely helped, because there were some moments I'm sure she wanted to back out, especially early on.
Well, and what's really interesting is we grew up together. So we started dating when I was 15. He was 17. So we both got to experience both sets of parents. Like, he experienced my family dynamic and the way my parents parented and their relationship, and then I experienced his, and both very different, but both grounded in the Lord. Mm-hmm. And so we had that as, the centerpiece, that if we were going to get married and survive, God had to be at the center. So, that's where we were coming from, as young newlyweds, 19 and 21. It's kind of funny to say. Is how a 18-year-old.
Did both homes kind of portray like traditional roles, like as far as like your mother and your father?
Yeah, and yes and no. So my parents are a little older than his. Even though we're close in age. My mom worked full time, just like my dad did, was not super popular in that time for the women to work full time. His mom did as well. So, it was, they shared that load of earning for the home. But yeah, I think that typical roles other than what you would see there as far as like stay-at-home mom or whatever.
Yeah. As far as I don't know what's typical. Like that's kind of a how do you really answer that question? I guess that's perspective, but from a biblical sense, both moms and both dads worked in both households, but there was very much traditional or a biblical, the father was the head of the household. And that was in both houses.
Leader.
The leader spiritually for sure. Her dad led the Bible study at their home. My dad was a deacon in our church. So that from that aspect, very, very much traditional.
With that whole traditional and biblical point of view in the family dynamic, what we see today now more than ever is like with the culture and the way it's changing, a lot of women aren't liking that. They can't deal with the word head of household or leader of the home. You know what I mean? It's almost like a bad word per se, you know what I mean? But if it's done correctly, it's not to say that you are the head of household, you're in charge of everything and you're domineering or anything like that. It's having that perspective of putting yourself last before your family, you know what I mean? And when I mean last, I mean serving your family, that servant leader, you know what I mean? I think a lot of times people get that confused, if that makes sense.
That makes total sense. And that's a great explanation of, I think, some of the resistance in it today of the whole, like they've taken the whole submit out of the marriage vows and everything else. It's,
but he's charged to love me as Christ loved the church.
Yeah. So the burden's on me in this, right? It's really not her to submit or to be underneath my leadership. The burden really falls on the husband. And that's what both of our fathers demonstrated that amazingly. Both of them were like, everything was about their family and their children. It was both of them very much servants. I think it's funny though, because we get hung up on verbiage. We get hung up on verbiage, and words change over time. Like the same words don't mean the same thing, right? That's why there's more than just the King James version of the Bible, right?
Yeah.
Because words change. And when it talks about submitting, that's a respect thing. That doesn't mean one person is dominant over the other person. That means that you're equally in tune to each other's needs, is what that's actually talking about. When it talks about the husband being the head of the household, it's not talking about making all the decisions and didn't decide what money's spent here and there and everything else. It's talking about being the spiritual leader in that home, in that example. And like she said, as Christ
if that's
loved
not
the
happening,
church,
then you got a whole heck of a lot of mess.
Yeah. And in 25 years of marriage, there's been a whole lot of mess, because that's not an easy thing to do. Like, I'm not going to sit here and act like, I love her like Christ loves the church. I want to, but I fail miserably most of the time. So luckily she's very patient.
I think also a lot of women, though, are afraid of those verses in the Bible because they've had experiences with unsafe men, or their father was really unsafe with them. And so then they translate that image into like all men, or, they don't have a good example of what safety is and what it really means to submit under a man that is truly godly and really loves them and loves their family and stuff like that, and is willing to serve the family. So I think that's where a lot of that fear comes from, and why there's a huge resistance with it in today's society.
Yeah, for sure. And I like what your wife said, Brian. she said that, or actually it was you who said that she was very patient with you. You know what I mean? That you are not this perfect person, right? But yet she was patient with you on your days, and I think that's key in a husband and wife relationship, is being patient with each other, having that empathy and just being able to just really just know that, man, they're not perfect, they're struggling or whatever, you know what I mean? And I'm going to give them that level of grace that they deserve, because we all deserve grace.
Yeah.
We don't want mercy, we want grace.
Yeah,
You know
me too.
Yeah.
It's definitely hard, like you said, Brian. So,
Yeah, I would I don't want to be argumentative, but I don't think we really deserve it.
no.
I mean, honestly, I don't think any of us deserve it. That's
Nope.
kind of the beauty of it. I mean, we're talking about being Christians and having a Christ-centered marriage. I mean, the whole thing comes down to, like, the grace that we get, it's undeserved.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of it. And that's when you get your head wrapped around that, that's love. I mean, that's true love. And that's where the ability to serve your spouse or serve your children and everything comes from, is the fact that we're loved unconditionally by our Father, our Heavenly Father. And that's the only way we can pour that out, or even come close to demonstrating that for somebody else. Is you're really just reflecting, you're trying to reflect the light of Christ, because it ain't coming from me. It ain't in me. Without the Holy Spirit, it ain't in me. So yeah. And I think, her being patient with me trying to do my best. It really does come down to, if you're not both focused on Christ, I don't see how anybody can make it through marriage.
And we say that all the time. How the heck do people do this without the Lord?
Yeah, because because it very much, without Christ in the center, it becomes a very selfish endeavor. Like, why would I do this for her? What has she done for me? I mean, your human nature just kicks in, and it becomes that what's the word I'm looking for?
The competition, almost, me versus you.
Yeah, it's not a me versus you. It's kind of you know what I mean? Like, I'll rub your feet, but I want a massage, like,
what's in it for me?
What's in it for me? I'm drawing a blank on what that's called, the tit for tat, back and forth, but
yeah, it's almost like you're keeping score. Like, oh, you did this, so I guess I'll do this for you. And it can even go like the negative route too. Like, you hurt me here, so I'm going to hurt you there. So it can go both ways if you're not in a position where you're keeping Christ as the center, or your eyes set on what he wants you to do.
Absolutely.
Now, I thought there's something that you said, Brian. You said that being equally in tune with each other's needs. I think that's a big, big, big thing that we need to do. How do you guys do that in your marriage?
We're just starting to do that. 25 years in.
Horribly. Yeah, 20 something years into it, I realized that in order to make sure I'm meeting her needs, that I have to find out what they were. I thought I had it all figured out, right? Like, I had everything she needed. Nope.
Really, working together has drawn that out so much, because we spend so much time together and we see things so differently. Just from that female male perspective. I mean, that's the ground level, right? What your glasses you're looking through. But yeah, working together has, with health coaching and coaching couples, and I think that has really brought to the surface what each other's needs are. Line industry, you don't see your husband a whole lot for a lot of your marriage, and so it does take some intentional time to really get down and know each other well.
Well, it lifts to the surface when you start working with your spouse. It's a whole nother level, which is awesome. I mean, it's been really challenging, but it's also been really great. Your need to communicate rises, and with that communication, you realize how much was going unsaid before. So it's yeah, I mean, I guess if I was going to encourage anybody to do anything is just to ask. I think that's what we would do if we were with friends or whatever, and we weren't sure what they needed. We would just ask them. Guys, you can ask your wife, what do you need? You might not like the answer. She might not be able to answer. First time you ask her,
she does. You
she
gotta
might
be
not,
willing.
she might not be ready to answer that, but yeah. Yeah, communicating, and then in that communication, something we've learned here recently that's really helped is we pre-communicate. So what does that mean? That means if I have a complaint or a request, I give her a heads up that I want to discuss it, and I just give her a heads up of what it is I want to talk about, and then set a time in the future to do so. It's not a let's talk about it now thing. We just realized that it's not fair. You know, she would do the same thing and I would do it. I'll talk about me. I'm not going to talk about her. I'll talk about me. I would have this whole story playing, this reel going in my head, right?
Yep.
And I would work through it. I had all my ammo, right? I had all the targets lined up and I was ready to just mow them down. And she would walk in and I would just start firing. And then she would get super defensive and I'm like, well, what? It's all true. It's all right. And it's not that she disagreed with me. It's that I just literally caught her off guard with it. You know, she wasn't ready to talk about it. And here I am, you know, I've worked myself up, and then vice versa. So we've both learned to just, like, if it's anything important like that, hey, I want to talk about this, maybe even give a real brief, like, I got a little problem here, but let's talk about it tomorrow night. Let's talk about it on date night. Let's talk about it, whatever, so that you can both be prepared to actually have a conversation about it. And then it doesn't feel like you're being attacked.
Wow, that is big. Because I know for many years in our marriage, I would blindside my wife with a bunch of stuff. You know what I mean? Like you said, I would be living it scenarios in my head and everything. And here I am on the road. I come home. She's expecting to, you know, to say hello, and I want to share my world with you and all this stuff. And here I am blindsiding her with what's going on in the yard. Why is my grass dying? Why are my fruit trees dying? Why are my animals dying? You know, all kinds of, why isn't the house clean? You know, all this different stuff that I had expectations for. And I think that's a big problem is a lot. I mean, it's good to have expectations, but when those expectations are dictating how you treat your children or your spouse, that's not a good thing. You know, and especially when they're not met, because you're always going to be disappointed. You know, no one could ever really meet your expectations. That's what I found. You know what I mean? People get disappointed. You know what I mean? So
I think too, a lot of expectations are unspoken. So like we have these expectations in our mind and we're not telling people, or we're not telling our spouse, like, oh, well, if he really loved me, he would ask me what's wrong. Can't he see that I'm like upset over here doing the dishes? But it's hard to meet expectations if we're not even speaking them out, I think. So that makes, I think it harder to even, you know, show up and know what your spouse needs. So like Brian was saying, yeah, ask. And then also we need to say like, hey, the kids are acting up. Can you come over here and help me out? Like, can you get off your phone on Sundays and help get the kids dressed so we can go to church on time? Or, you know what I mean? Things like that, instead of just being silent and then being upset afterwards because you didn't say anything.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
I also thought it was interesting because Brian said that he thought he knew what you wanted, Julie. Would you say what you really wanted and then he would like kind of translate it through his own filter and then develop something else out of it?
I do that.
I asked because that's what our situation was. I would voice out exactly what I wanted and then he would like filter it through his own like filter, and then it would come out as well, this is what you want. That's not what I asked for at all.
No, I think I'm more of the non-speaker. Like I'm the more like, okay, you live in the house too. You know that the dishes are dirty or that I'm on 5 calls back to back, so I can't cook. Like I would just assume like he sees my calendar. I'm booked from 5 to 8 o'clock at night or whatever. I mean, that's rare, but sometimes it does happen.
Mm-hmm.
Meat sitting out on the counter, like just cook it. Like I don't get, why do I gotta say this is what we're,
Yeah.
So I think and a lot of that is cleared up with just pre-planning. So and it's funny, like we'll get into this groove where we pre-plan, and then all of a sudden like the season changes and the schedules change and we just shift and like we're off kilter for like a week and a half, 2 weeks. And then we're like, okay, we got to get back to planning meals and deciding who's going to do what, and really looking at each other's schedules and helping each other out, because I literally can't do everything by myself, and our kids help as well, but they have specific jobs that they do around the house. But yeah, I'm the yeah, you should know. But on the other hand, not super like angry about things like that. Like we just do it myself, like I'll just do it. Like we all gotta eat, but then that turns into just really overtired and not doing self-care and not taking care of other things that might be more important than doing the dishes, so yeah, it's a dance, right? It ebbs and flows. And
so that's and we know that, so that's where I come in now. So I more than being able to read her mind, because she's very much the, hey, can I help you? Yes, I need help. What can I do? I'll get with you in a minute. And it's like, asking for help is more trouble than the help's worth sometimes. So where I come in is I know that about her. So I'm the one saying, hey, Sunday afternoon, we're going to sit down, and I block time on our calendars, and we're going to sit down and we're going to plan the meals for the rest of the week. We're going to look at each other's schedules. We're going to figure out who's taking who where and what time and everything else to the best of our ability, and saying, hey, like we need to get back to planning. Right? Because planning sometimes it sounds and it feels, it can even feel really sounds sterile, right?
Yeah.
Who plans family time on their calendar? We do. Because if you don't, guess what doesn't happen?
Yeah.
Family time. Because if it's on your calendar, it's there. That means when that time comes, these things go away and it's time, and you can be present and you can focus on it, because that's what's scheduled, is for that time. When family time's over, we've got all these other things that are going on. So, but yeah, I think it's made a huge difference. Like we're still figuring it out, working through it, but what we do know is that scheduling and being proactive about the things that are important, the really important things in our life, each other, our marriage, our faith, our children, that family time, protecting that first, actually scheduling it. That way everybody knows, like, this is family time.
Yeah. And that scheduling works great with kids too. I mean, seriously, kids love to be on a schedule. I learned that from my mom. She always had us planned out, scheduled, everything, food for the week, whatever, you know what I mean? And I definitely can see how that's helping you guys out, because that's a big thing I'd like to implement in my family as well, is just scheduling. You know what I mean? That way, that allotted time, like you said, is designated to that person. You could live in that moment, and being intentional. A lot of what I get comes from the Bible, right? I've been doing this study on Nehemiah and how he was his builder and stuff like that. And the story about Nehemiah is so interesting to me, is that here's this guy who's a cupbearer, right? Meaning that he would taste the food and drink the wine for the king. And if he lived, he lived. And if he didn't, right? I mean, it was a prestigious and a curse. at the same time, right? As a choice of career for this man. But with that being said, is the way I took it is, here is this man who is going to become this leader, right? He's going to lead the building of this great wall around his hometown. Never built anything in his life, right? But here he is in the presence of the king day in and day out, and he's learning, he's observing this king rule a nation. So he takes that information, right? And he learns how to rule these people. Now, how I liken that into parenting or being a father or a husband as a leader of the household, here is Nehemiah. He takes it, right? Never had this role before. He's learned from this king because he's been in the presence. And now he's being intentional. What does he do? Before he takes on the task, he starts planning like you're talking about. He starts going out in the middle of at night, right? With no one with him. He's looking over the whole wall and what's going to be needed to build this wall. He's taking down an account, and that's being planning. That's being intentional. You know what I mean? I think it's important to do that. And I see that. And then now with you talking about it like that, I see that's even more important than ever. You know what I mean? So fathers, if you're listening, husbands, are you listening? Be intentional with your family, start planning, brother. Help your wives out,
It's interesting because we go on walks, and that's where a lot of our conversations happen, and we'll have all this time where we connect and we're talking about hard things, and then we also talk about things that are like with the family and stuff, and a lot of our ideas, I guess, kind of come from those walks. He's like, that's really good, we should record that for a podcast or whatever. Anyway, recently we're talking about like connecting and stuff, and how you get really busy, Julie, and you'll just do it yourself. And I'm kind of the same person. I'll just do it myself, but I recognize that I'll run myself ragged, just trying to get it all done. Like recently I was painting my daughter's cheer box, and it took like 4 weeks to do because I'm kind of a perfectionist when it comes to painting and stuff. And it was a huge box, and it was in the kitchen, and the house was a mess, and the kids, like, it was really difficult. And David was feeling really neglected because we weren't getting time to go on these walks and things like that. And he's like, he kind of has one idea of how we can connect. And that's either we sit in the room and isolate from the kids and we talk where it's one-on-one undisrupted, or we go on our walk. And so he was like getting really frustrated, but I was also getting frustrated because I was like, well, I can't do everything. And now I'm getting resentful because you want to connect and you want to take me away from what I need to do. And then I'm staying up, I'm burning the candle at both ends. Literally, I was the first one awake and the last one in bed, always. And while I was painting this box, like,
damn the box.
Like everybody's mad at this cheer box in the house. They're like, it's taking mom away from us. But
like science fair projects when we used to do those, right?
Right. Anyway, so we go on this walk and we're connecting and we're both feeling frustrated. But I was like, well, you know what? It would really help me is if we don't sit in the room and isolate and talk. Instead, you come into like my world, and if I need to cook dinner, because I get really like anxious if I can't cook dinner at a certain time because I don't want to eat at 9 o'clock at night. We send the kids upstairs, they watch TV upstairs, and then you and I can talk while we cook dinner together instead. Or, if you see that I have a pile of laundry, sit with me while I'm folding laundry. You don't even have to help, but just kind of sit in that same area if you really want to talk. And then we can discuss it while I'm getting things done. Because I can mindlessly fold laundry. I've been doing it my whole life and still hold a conversation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so he was like, wow, that's really amazing. And what was your revelation about all that?
Revelation I had about that was that we, there's this idea that women need to go into a man's box, right? Men live in boxes. Okay. And like, say, for instance, if you have a man cave or you like working on cars or hunting or whatever, the story goes that wife should go into that man's space and meet him, right? If she wants to connect with him. My revelation was, why don't we do that with our own wives? Why are we so important that we can't do that? You know what I mean? And it was a big revelation for me, and I think like my wife said, I can go into her world. If I want to know about her, I can go into her world and I can ask those questions and start connecting that way. It doesn't need to be one way. It could be both ways, if that makes sense.
Because the thing is like, as a stay-at-home mom, our job is our home. So like everything functions.
Never goes away.
Right. Everything functions because we're holding it all together, like with all the little things that people don't see. Well, we don't go into our husband's jobs and say, I need to take you away from your job so I can connect with you. But often that happens with husbands because they come home from work and they don't realize we still are doing a job into the late night hours, and we don't even always have time for ourselves. But yet we need to carve out time to keep the marriage together. And sometimes it needs to look like both people are mutually coming together and living life alongside each other.
Yeah, that's good. We're taking that.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Yeah.
you write that down. That's really good.
Seriously taking that.
I love that analogy of just looking at it as like, yeah, I mean, I walk in the door and I expect everything to stop because I'm home. Like I see it as
that's my day's just getting going.
Yeah, I see home as my refuge. Like that would be like her walking onto the right of way and asking me to, stop doing what I'm doing and come hang out for a minute. So
yeah, for sure. And I think, a lot of like we're just discussing, like, man, we got to respect their jobs. We expect them to respect our jobs and what we do, right? It's hazardous job. We've discussed it before, and we don't expect them to be calling and blowing us up all the time. You know what I mean? If you're watching your guys or they're up in the air or whatever, if you're doing hot work or whatever, it's the same thing with them. When we come home, we can't expect them just to stop, you know what I mean? And treat we devalue them when we do that. That's one of the other revelations I had is when I act like her job isn't as important as mine, that's devaluing your spouse. And I thought that hit me hard. You know what I mean? I was like, wow, what a POS I've been. I mean, I'm very hard on myself, so I always consistently strive to try to be better, and sometimes that negative self-talk is pretty harsh. You know what I mean? So, but helps me to grow.
Yeah, I agree. Like we both can be really hard on ourselves and sometimes even hard on each other. But I think that it's so helpful if he can see, like, if I'm in the middle of cooking dinner, and I tell him, let me just get through dinner and let's get the night routine over with, and then we can just sit in bed and lay and talk for an extra hour instead of getting on the phones or getting on TV or something like that. Just carve out that time. And I relate to what you all are saying, planning and being intentional about making time for each other, but also living life alongside each other rather than two entities that are trying to like connect every once in a while. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I wanted to ask you guys, being that you guys have been together for so long, you guys married young and stuff like that, did life in marriage turn out the way you guys expected it as you've progressed? Like,
that's hard. That's funny because I don't know that I had a whole lot of expectations about what the future would look like this far out.
Yeah.
I know in the first 10 years, things didn't look like I thought they would, for sure. We got married young, immature.
I think it took a lot longer to train than she was hoping for.
We battled a while. But we like Brian said, it's just not an option. Divorce is not an option. And it's definitely evolved over time. I feel like in the last 4 years, we've really come into a different place. And that came from each of us starting a health journey and taking care of ourselves personally. Like, I got to take care of me and be good with me and grow in me and not, separate, but together, if if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Because we grow and change at different rates. Now it's starting to look a lot more like what I had hoped it would. And I think that comes with time, but it also comes with more time together, which is super helpful. And kids not being babies and toddlers, and like they're more self-sufficient, of course, now as they're teenagers. So things just change. And I think that if you go into marriage thinking, we're going to get married, we're not going to have kids for a while, and then we're going to have kids, and life is just going to keep on going and nothing's going to change, and it's still going to be like it's just going to be amazing. And if you go into it like that, like it's not going to be difficult, and you're not going to have seasons where things change. You're going to be so disappointed and just distraught, right? And I think I've even heard people say, well, you're not who I married anymore. Well, good.
Right, good, exactly.
Like God calls us to mature, like,
right?
And change. And if we're not, like, what you can't live that way, like in the past, and everything that you experience in life grows you, hopefully. And so you do change. And so it's really cool that we've grown and changed together, and like we like each other more now than we did before, which is a good thing.
Yeah, there was definitely a point in our marriage where we knew we loved each other, but I would ask her pretty regular, do you like me? Sometimes she just would not answer.
Right.
I love you. She said, I love you too. Do you like me? Not at the moment. No, and for people that are listening to this that have been married 15, 20 plus years, they know exactly what we're talking about. For you younger folks that are maybe listening to this, it's not going to make as much sense. But if you think about marriage, just like anything else in life, like Julie was saying, like you're going to grow, you're going to change. Like we're a big mass of all of our experiences, right? Good and bad, right? They form our opinions, they form our actions. They're pre-programmed, right? In our prefrontal cortex, we got a lot of responses that are pre-programmed. You hear all in our industry, we hear all the time, complacency. Well, what we call complacency is literally just our brain and its pre-programmed responses. It's things we do without having to put a lot of thought into them because we've been there, done that, or at least we perceive that we've been there, done that. So as you get older and as you spend more time as married and in life in general, your ideas are going to change. You know what I mean? How you view everything, how you view your spouse, the world, politics, your career. Line work, when I first started in line work was a lifestyle. Like, I mean, it was, dude, I watched Slim the Lineman one time and I told her, I was a lineman before I met you. Like, I love that line. I chunked that and deal with it. And then I figured out, thankfully, early on, pretty young, I figured out that line work, it's my career. It's a job. It's not who I am. It doesn't define me. It's what I do for a living. And now I try to help as many linemen as I can figure that out as young as possible. Like this is a job. It's not a lifestyle. But yeah, in our marriage, does it look like what we thought it? Man, to be honest, I didn't think about that. Yeah, she might have. Maybe she thought, like, what's our life going to look like? I was in love. I loved her, and that's all. That's about as far as I thought about it. We decided to start having children, and then the conversations got a little bit deeper. And there was a few things that we wanted to make sure that we didn't compromise on, and we've stuck pretty true to those with our children. But outside of that, I was ready to just kind of take it as it came, And now I've got teenagers. I got one that's, on the borderline of being an adult, and it's like, how'd this happen?
Right.
But I think it's one of those things that if you stick with it, if you're committed to figuring it out, every time you kind of get to the next
Roadblock.
precipice,
Yeah.
you can see a little bit further. You know what I mean? You can
Mm-hmm.
see the next hill, and you climb that one together. And then when you get up there, there's always going to be that next hill to climb.
Mhm.
The cool thing is at this point, it's like we got this. Like we don't know what it's going to be, but we know that we've got it. Together, we're going to figure it out, and that it's probably not going to be fun. Very few of them have been fun, but we've made it to the top. You know what I mean? We've worked through it, and better for it.
And God's proven himself faithful every single time. So I think that's huge to hold on to, is just, God's got us. And I mean, we've been through some stuff, and, personally, financially, different things. And at the end of the day, it was like, it ain't gonna kill us. And if it does, we're with the Lord anyway. But I think that just having that perspective, that and that's why I've always said, like, I don't know how people do this without the Lord. I don't honestly have any clue. Because I always have that in my mind. The Lord is faithful. He's faithful. He's faithful. And in his time, he'll take care of it all.
Yeah. And again, as you go through those experiences and as you mature, it's come on, man. I got teenagers. Remember being a teenager? Remember that the world ended if you didn't get invited to that party? Like I'm dealing with this right now. Like they didn't invite me. You just forgot. Or maybe they don't like you. Big deal.
Right.
Go hang out with somebody else.
Say now, but
it's easy for us to say now, but do you remember what that felt like in high school? Like that was it. I remember playing football in high school, and Friday night, win or lose, that was it. Like the whole world revolved around that scoreboard set at the end of the fourth quarter. And it was real to me at that time. That's how important it was. Looking back on it now, it sounds silly, but that's life. And like I said, as we mature, as we go through more of that, you can't tell somebody that's in high school that's got a game coming up that it's just a game. To them, it's not. To them, it's everything.
Yeah.
Now, after they do that for year after year, and they get out of high school and realize that it was just a game, then you can, and then you can have that experience. So, I again, for the young people that are listening, we're talking about marriage. If you don't have Christ in the middle of your marriage, start there. That's the first thing you guys need to figure out. After that, just know, like, I'm not saying it's easy. And if anybody ever told you that, they lied to you. Marriage is very difficult. It's very worth it, but it's something you're going to have to fight for. It's something you're going to have to work at, and you're going to have to fight for.
It's definitely rewarding when you overcome obstacles and overcome hardships. I agree.
And it blows my mind too, because like my parents are still together. They're been married for 51 years now.
Woo.
And man, looking back, they went through some rough stuff. Like, I don't know how they stayed together, right? And I give my hats off to them, because it took both of them. It took both of them. I mean, they went through stuff that most married couples shouldn't have to. Recently, one of the big ones that they went through is they lost their baby child, or my younger brother. He was the baby, and no parent should ever have to bury their child, And if they hadn't gone through all those hardships, they wouldn't be able to go through what they're going through today. And this is recently, so that wound's still open, right? And what they've learned, I had my mom tell me the other day, what she's learned is that they have nobody, that they have to rely on each other now, because all the kids have moved away. My brother's the only one that lived close to him, and they live in a rural area. They had a working ranch. My brother was a lineman, and he was also a guide for elk. So that's what they did. And they had big aspirations, big plans and stuff like that. And, that was one of the things that happened when he passed away. Those things went away, and they had to reassess their life, reassess their dream. And that's what they're having to do. And they're having to lean on each other. But the beautiful thing with that is, at least they have each other. They didn't give up. They didn't throw in the towel when they could have,
Mhm.
you know, and they're still together leaning on each other. And I think that's a beautiful thing, you know.
Yes.
With marriage, I've always heard it been explained to me is that it's like a bridge. It's tension, right?
Mm.
And what is tension defined as? You know, two opposite forces pulling in opposite directions, right? And that's how marriage seems like a lot of times for us, right? We're both going in opposite directions. But if you really look at it, that tension is actually creating this bridge, this foundation for you to go across. You know what I mean? If worked on, right? It's this tension that's going to keep us suspended in life. You know, so if we look at it in that aspect, I think when tension does come, when pressure does get applied to our marriages, we're going to be able to see through it in a different lens, like you guys talked about, and be like, okay, this is here not to harm us or hurt us, but to make us stronger.
It's for you. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So it's marriage is interesting. I mean, it truly is. And
I think it definitely tests you.
yeah,
I think it's important. Like, a lot of people think that they met the wrong person if that person triggers them. But I think a lot of the time, like, in marriage, it's designed that way to kind of trigger the past traumas so that way you can work through them. So it's more important to develop like a safe space in those triggers, where, because everybody's going to get triggered at some point in time. I mean, even our kids get triggered, everybody gets triggered. So I think it's just more important to focus on when somebody's triggered, how to work through those triggers in a safe manner, rather than, I'm super triggered, I want a divorce because you make me feel bad. Where God uses marriage as the primary tool to mature us and to grow us and to strengthen us and to develop us into people that are of substance, that can teach younger couples how to do it, to teach our children how to do it, how to overcome our triggers, how to overcome our past pains, and how to move into a space where we're more than conquerors.
Yeah.
You got to have that iron sharpens iron, right?
Yes.
sure.
Your marriage
Can't be fighting with a noodle.
Well, no, and you said also, like, they make me feel bad, so I'm leaving them. You know what I mean? Not just in marriage, but I think in our world right now in general, we're all a little too hung up on our feelings.
Yes.
Not that feelings aren't important. They're real. Feel them, right? It's okay to be angry, to be happy, to be sad, to mourn, to laugh. All of these emotions are great. Just don't let them dictate your actions, right? We're living in a society where more and more we're seeing decisions being based on how things feel. As your feelings lie to you constantly. Most of the time, the story we're telling ourselves is half truth at best.
Yeah.
And a lot of times the opposite of what we're telling ourselves is actually closer to reality. So we'll convince ourselves. I mean, we're talking about marriage, so I'll keep it in that. But I'll convince myself that she's thinking this or she's feeling this. You know what I mean? And like you know what I mean? I'm all upset, and that she's treating me unfairly, and she has no idea.
I'm like, what's happening?
What's going on? And vice versa. It happens both ways. And it's kind of funny, because we'll look at each other now and be like, are you telling yourself the story? Like, should you let me in on what I did? What did I do? It's kind of like waking up because you had a dream that they were, flirting with somebody. Like, it didn't really happen. It was just a dream. But we do that. We do that on a regular basis, but not just in our marriages, in life in general. If you look at what's going on with, and I don't want to open up Pandora's box here, but if you just look at what's going on, I've got two teenagers. So with sexuality and identity and everything else, it's all about how we feel. Right? Well, feelings aren't real.
No.
Right.
They're emotions. They're not designed to drive our actions.
Right. Yeah.
Most of them, if you just breathe deep, go away in about 60 to 90 seconds. right? So do you really want to make a life-changing decision based on something that's that fleeting? No, we don't. We want to base our decisions on reality and truth and consequence, not feeling.
It's crazy that you said that and you tied that in, because you're absolutely right. People's feelings right now. People do have feelings, like you said, but man, how many of us today, even in our industry, are getting so upset over something and they're making these life-changing, life-altering decisions, right? To where now you're not close to home. Because why? Because you didn't get along with the guy, or because whatever the case may be. And now you're going home and explaining to your wife, you got to pack up the camper and you're going to be 2 hours, 4 hours, 2 states away, right? When you just promised her that you're going to be home, that she was going to start school. You know what I mean? I don't think we take into account that our decisions based on that feeling have repercussions, not just for us, but through our whole families.
Yeah.
I think because society nowadays has really minimized the importance of commitment.
Yes.
And sticking with like an actual commitment. Like you make a commitment to do this or that. Like I'm committing to go to school and to finish, but a lot of the time halfway through your kid is like, I don't want to do it anymore. Or even you decide, I don't want to do it anymore. I'm not passionate about this, rather than staying committed and going through the hard things and doing the things you don't want to do. So that way you can have the end result that you actually ultimately want. And I think that's so like everybody is just so wishy-washy. And they've also, I think people are really society has moved towards a codependence area where they are so affected by the way other people act and behave, and they let it just totally rule their world, and they don't stand in a place of like a position where they're just like, no, I won't be moved based off how you feel. That's your life. That's not my life. Rather, people are bringing everybody else's opinion into their life and then letting it move them. And then they create this life that they didn't even want based off of how everybody else feels. And that often happens in marriage too. I know I was really guilty of it. Like David's disposition and what he was going through, or how he would come home and his attitude and stuff would really affect me. And then all of a sudden my world is just a mess because I can't live a good life because he's upset. And we don't want to do that. Somebody has to be on solid ground.
Yeah.
Because both of us used to be in that kind of position, and it was just like,
that's hard.
I
think we've all done that for sure.
I used to do that when I'd be pushing crews. I used to do that with the guys who work for me. If they showed up and they had a hanging face, my God, it changed my whole world. I would literally wanted to hit them. Like, seriously. I'm like, what's wrong with you? It's a beautiful day. We're doing line work and you're freaking out here complaining. Really? You know what I mean? And I'd get so mad. And it got to the point where my GF had to pull me out of that leadership position, being a foreman. Be like, dude, you're wound way too tight, brother. You need to chill, dude. The guys don't want to work with you no more. They're upset because they're saying you're making men cry. And and I'm thinking to myself, I'm a little dude. I'm only 5'5", you know what I mean? But man, when he said that, I had to like kind of step back and realize that I was getting burnt out,
I had a rule on the crew that we were either all happy or we were all mad.
Yeah.
Like, we're all going to get on the same page.
Yeah.
So, 5-man crew, 3 people are upset. Let's get upset and get some work done.
Right.
Or if it was just 2 people, like the rest of us are happy, like, get over it. It's laughing, or you can take the day off. Like, we're going to all be on the same page. It's super important.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think you kind of, when you mentioned, the mindset piece of, it's happening for me and not to me, is a very, very important thing to kind of key in on as well. And that's something Julie and I, when she talks about the last about 4 years, things have been in an upward trajectory as far as our relationship, but it's because we've both made a commitment to personally develop, and And one of the big pieces of that personal development is understanding that you have a choice. Like, it's our decision. We can either have life happening to us,
Mm-hmm.
right, and be kind of in that victim place, or we can have life happening for us. And that's even the bad things, right? The tough things, the things that hurt, the things that are hard. I don't believe in coincidence. I think there's a divine intention there. So when we're going through something hard, it's getting us ready for something that's coming. It's to position us so that we're going to be in the place and have the strength that we need when that time comes. So that really allows you to look at everything, even the bad things, as happening for me, right? What can I learn from you? This is an opportunity to grow, to get stronger, to be better. And when you have two people in a relationship that are both striving to have that mindset,
Yes,
it's impossible for two people to work individually for that type of growth mindset and it not grow the relationship together.
Yeah.
No, I could definitely see that. That is a great way to look at things for sure. Happening to me or happening for me, not to me. Yeah, I like that. I definitely like that. One of the things I wanted to ask you guys real quick is about parenting, okay? Because that's a big deal within marriages today, the different parenting styles. There's democratic and then there's authoritative. Now, the definition of democratic is allowing a fairness and respect to develop between child and a parent. It involves treating children as equals, whereas the authoritative parenting style is kind of like where I fell into, where parents set policies and explain the reason behind the rules to children and seek their opinion. Both of them will lead to conflict if they're not balanced. Like, where do you guys see yourselves in that realm as far as that goes with your parenting?
We're authoritative. I'm probably a little more on the democratic side of that. I'm willing to listen and hear the whole story. But then when it comes down to it, it's but that's not truth. And we're gonna walk in truth, and this is what truth is, and this is what God wants for you, and I hear you and I understand, but we still are gonna walk this way because God's given us the authority in that way to really set that path. And we've always explained things to our kids from the very beginning. It's probably from some parenting book that we read.
To a point. I mean, as much as you can explain things to a child.
Exactly.
Do you think that sometimes your parenting styles being different sometimes cause tension in the marriage?
I think the parenting styles is the same, but we're male and female. So I think that it just, God made us different. And so I think that that's where the difference comes in, is just what that looks like. Like, the goal is the same, but in the process, it looks a little different.
Yeah, I don't think we've never disagreed on how we were parenting our children. I will say that I'm not as empathetic as she is. If that's a fair way to say it. I tend to be a little bit more cut and dry. But that's kind of how I was raised, how my father was, is like,
and I also have to dig for information if I want it from him. So it's interesting how that's our personalities.
So it's part, and like I said, I'm working on me. I'm less like, I have more conversations with my children now, but they're also older. But something I told my son and my daughter, it seems to resonate a little bit more with my son as a young man, but with my daughter, both of them, is my hope and my prayer is that when they're grown and they're married and they have children and everything, that we're the best of friends. I really look forward to that point in time in our lives. However, that's not now. Like, right now, I'm your dad. Like, you don't need another friend. I'm not your buddy. You don't refer to me as dude. I'm your dad, and I'm going to be that, because that's what I've been charged with, to be your father and to raise you up and to make you a contributing part of our society. Right. Both of my children have given their life to the Lord. So,
Oh, that's awesome.
right, that's
Good
like,
job, guys.
we checked the biggest box has been checked. So now we're working on all the other stuff.
Sanctification.
Yeah. Now we're working on all the other stuff. So, yeah, pray for us.
For sure.
On all our parts.
Yeah, we have two wonderful children that are trying to figure it out. You know what I mean? They're struggling with the same thing that we all struggle with. You know, their identity, their, you know, their sense of worth and value and everything else. You know, and I try to do my best to remember back to when that time was. I've never been a teenage girl. So again, my son, I tend to relate to a little bit more. But I remember being 17 years old and being told, you know, start acting like a man.
Yeah.
And the minute I did, being reminded that I was still a boy. It's a very rough
Confusing.
time in life. That 16 to 20-year-old time in life is very, very challenging, right? Because you're being told, grow up, act like a man. But like I said, you're being reminded by all the older men that you're not a man yet. So it's an awkward time.
Yeah, for sure. I could see how people get confused. At one point at 18, you can go serve your country and die for your country, but you can't even buy alcohol or a handgun, you know what I mean, until you're 21 or whatever, you know what I mean? So
yeah.
Your brain is not fully functioning yet.
Yeah. What is it? 23, I think, that the frontal lobe actually develops. 23,
They keep raising the age of that.
Yeah.
I think it's 24.
No. But thank you guys so much for coming on and sharing everything you guys do, how to be successful in your marriage and stuff like that. This has been a great honor to have you guys on here. And at this point, I want to give you guys an opportunity to tell our guests how to get a hold of you for your business and stuff like that. I know that they will, you know, definitely be interested in reaching out to you guys. So if you can do that, that'd be great.
Yeah. The best way to contact us is either through Instagram, and that is Julie Russell RF4, the number 4L. Our business name is Real Fitness for Life. So that's our Instagram. Email's the same, realfitnessforlife@icloud.com. Another great way to get a hold of us, or comment on the podcast. I'll be looking in there to see if anybody wants to hook up and just talk about health and wellness and creating optimal health in all the different areas of your life, body, mind, finances, spirit, the whole thing.
Yeah. I just want to, I always like to clarify and set the record straight before it even goes any further, is we're not personal trainers and we're not dietitians. We do not skip exercise, and we do have a nutritional side to what we do. But those are just pieces of what we do. We really incorporate total health. So that's physical, mental, financial. We don't leave anything out.
Personal development at its best.
Yeah. That's really it. We and it's not even us, it's you. If you decide that you're interested or you want to work with us, we're going to help you start figuring that out. If you become dependent on us, then that's just one more thing in life that you have to count on. We really promote and teach self-efficacy, and we show people how to start working on themselves and become the best version of that. It's a lot of fun. We love what we do. We absolutely love what we do.
That's awesome.
That's awesome, man. Well, once again, thank you guys for coming on. Appreciate you guys, and we'll let you know when this comes out. And thank you.